Chapter 11, Ice Memory. Location, Queen Maud Land, Antarctica. Date, January 7, 2038. Time, 8:21 Universal Time Coordinated. The storm had passed, but the silence that followed was worse. Elias Kane stood at the mouth of the excavation shaft, staring down into the frostbitten chasm where the ice had melted without heat. The structure below, a jagged dome of obsidian-black material, seemed to pulse faintly beneath the surface as if drawing breath from the earth itself. He couldn't feel his fingers. Not from the cold, but from what he'd seen. Colonel Ward appeared beside him, wrapped in a thick parka, goggles streaked with snowmelt. "Ready?" Elias nodded. They descended. The tunnel had been dug by military drones over the past 48 hours, boring directly into the bedrock beneath the eastern ridge of Queen Maud Land. Decades of satellite scans had shown nothing unusual here, until the signal activated and the ice began to liquefy in perfect geometric shapes. They reached the threshold. The room wasn't built by human hands. The walls curved in impossible ways, surfaces rippling with light that didn't seem to come from any source. In the center of the chamber floated a black sphere, nearly 3 meters across, suspended above the ground with no visible support. Just like the one in Ward's photo. Just like the ones from the files Mara had shown Elias weeks ago. Only this one was awake. "I want to record everything," Elias whispered. Ward simply nodded and handed him a palm-sized device. "No cameras work in here. Use the field recorder, analog only." Elias clicked it on. The recorder began humming softly, as if struggling to exist inside the room's geometry. He took a step forward. The sphere turned. Not physically but perceptually, it noticed him. "Do you feel that?" Elias asked. "Like it's thinking." "I feel nothing," Ward replied. But his knuckles were white around the grip of his sidearm. Elias drew closer. The air bent around the orb. His breath echoed back at him out of sync, a delay that seemed to fracture time by milliseconds. He reached out. The moment his fingertips brushed the surface, the world tore away. He was falling. Not through space but through memory. His own. And others. Fire and caves. Humans huddled around the same black sphere, drawing it on the walls in ochre and ash. Priests in Mesopotamia kneeling before it in temples that no longer existed. An Inuit woman carving its spiral symbol into bone. A child in an Egyptian tomb whispering numbers in a trance. 3517. Every age. Every place. It had always been there. And then, the field. That impossible silver plane, the one Cowrie had seen beneath Delhi. He stood in it now. Equations hung in the air, turning like star maps. Frequencies etched in light. Behind him, another figure formed, a younger version of himself, flickering, unfinished. "Elias," the voice said. He turned. It wasn't him. It wasn't human. But it wore his memory like a mask. "You are one of the last," it said. "You saw the rupture in the snow. You touched the seed. That means the echo has found you." "I don't understand," Elias said. "What are you? What is this?" "This is the archive," the voice replied. "What your kind forgot. What we hid from you until it was safe." "Safe for what?" "To wake up." The field collapsed. He slammed back into his body, gasping. Blood ran from his nose. Ward was beside him, face pale. "What the hell just happened?" I saw them. All of them. Every time it appeared. The sphere. "It's not just a machine," Elias said, shivering. "It's a vessel. It stores consciousness. It preserves memory across millennia. It's us, Ward. But older. Purified. Edited." "Edited?" "Something's trying to bring those pieces back together." They turned toward the sphere. It had begun to rotate slowly, humming in the same rhythmic pulse as the original signal. 351, pause, 7. Then the pattern changed. 3, 5, 1, 7, 9, 13. A new sequence. Elias and Ward stared at each other. "It's counting," Elias whispered. "No," Ward said grimly, adjusting the comm on his shoulder. "It's activating." The sphere pulsed. Above them, far above the ice, every sensor across the South Pole began blinking red. The planet had just moved one step closer to remembering what it had been forced to forget. And it wasn't ready. Chapter 12, Error in the Code. Location, Palomar Observatory, California. Date, January 7, 2038. Time, 23:09 Pacific Standard Time. The telescope was supposed to be asleep. But the Palomar array was humming, alive with data, streaming pulses that weren't coming from the stars. Dr. Kira Shankar rubbed her eyes, leaned closer to the screen and froze. The anomaly was back. An ultra-narrowband signal at 3.51 Hz, buried beneath cosmic background noise. It wasn't natural. It wasn't from any satellite or Earth-based emission. And it was broadcasting in prime intervals, 3, 5, 1, 7, 9, 13, over and over again. Each cycle ended with a high-frequency burst that corrupted the software temporarily, like it didn't want to be observed. Kira's assistant, Devin, burst into the room. "Something's wrong with the backup logs," he said. "They're rewriting themselves. Automatically." "Which ones?" "All of them." Kira's pulse spiked. "Pull the server offline. Now." Devin hesitated. "It's not just our network." Kira turned to him. "What?" "I checked NOAA, ESA, even some of the military feeds on the dark grid. They're all receiving the same thing. The signal's syncing across every listening post. Someone, or something, is aligning them." Kira's eyes returned to the monitor. And then the line of code changed. "Not in the operating system. In the firmware." "This isn't possible," she whispered. "What is it?" She highlighted the injected sequence. At first glance it looked like machine code. But it wasn't. It was recursive, feeding back into itself, growing, learning. It wasn't trying to infect the system. It was trying to rewrite it. "Devin," she said almost too calmly, "back up the current stream. Copy it to analog. Vinyl, cassette, I don't care. Just get it off this machine." Devin nodded and ran. Kira stared at the screen. Lines of code shifted like living things, forming glyphs, then words, then numbers again. But one symbol kept repeating at the end of each string. Circled division slash. Not zero. Not null. A divide. A cut. An intentional severance. She pulled open the archived data from last week, before the first signal spike. There it was again. A single, isolated byte, perfectly preserved in the static. 3517. But now, it had changed. 35179113. Every new number widened the cycle. The intervals grew more erratic. And embedded deep inside the noise, Kira saw it. A pattern. It looked like a map. She increased the resolution and overlaid it with the Earth's magnetic field. The points lit up. Delhi, Alaska, Antarctica, and now, California. Whatever this was, it was creating anchor points. "Not satellites," she murmured. "Beacons." The firmware flickered. All the screens in the observatory turned black for 2 seconds. Then the message appeared. "Interface complete. Sequence 2 engaged. Do not interfere." Kira backed away. "This is a system," she whispered. "Not ours. Not alien either. Interior. Like we built it. Or it built us." Devin ran back in breathless. "You're not gonna believe this," he panted. "The backup didn't work. Every analog medium we tried, tapes, vinyl, they all played this." He hit play. The speaker emitted a whisper. "Do you remember the cut?" Kira's stomach turned. Chapter 13, Dead Languages. Location, Vatican Apostolic Archive, Vatican City. Date, January 8, 2038. Time, 5:12 Central European Time. Father Matteo Rinaldi had been awake for 26 hours. The candlelight burned low, its flicker casting long shadows across the ancient stone shelves of the Archivum Secretum. He wasn't supposed to be down here. Even for someone of his clearance, Section Sibyllus, the Whispering Wing, was off limits. But when the signal reached Rome and the Vatican satellites registered the same numeric pulse, 35179, Matteo knew it was time. He unlocked the final gate. Inside, behind layers of forgotten history and forbidden relics, sat a steel case sealed with wax, encoded with a papal cipher. It was marked, Ad somnum vocem. To the voice in sleep. Matteo broke the seal. Inside was a single vellum scroll, blackened with age, yet untouched by rot. He unrolled it slowly, reverently. Across the surface, written in languages long dead, Sumerian, Linear A, Proto-Nostratic, were spirals of text converging toward the same glyph etched into every translation. Circled division slash. He stared at the ink. Moved. The spiral wasn't decorative. It was functional, a signal primer rendered in visual grammar, waiting for the right frequency to activate its meaning. As he rotated the scroll under the candlelight, the ink pulsed faintly. Not just ink. Encoded biological material, nanoparticles infused with dormant data. Words formed in Latin across the center. Memoria fracta verbum redite. The memory fractured. The word has returned. Matteo trembled. He'd read about this in forbidden manuscripts. Mentions of a great recurrence, where reality itself was a simulation of a simulation, a mirrored recursion across epochs, with each loop leaving behind echoes. The signal wasn't alien. It was ancestral. He opened his encrypted satellite link and dialed a hidden frequency. A voice answered on the third ring. "Do you hear it too?" the voice asked. Matteo answered, "The word is speaking again." Pause. Then the voice replied, "Sequence 2 is affecting language roots globally. Cognitive drift has begun." Matteo closed his eyes. He'd feared this. If language began to shift, at the base, unconscious level, entire societies could fracture, unable to comprehend one another. Culture, law, identity, all rooted in words, would dissolve. He looked down at the spiral again. The final symbol had changed. Circled division / plus nabla. The divide and descent. A second message formed in real time, etched onto the scroll as if by invisible ink. "You were not the first. You will not be the last. The cycle burns." Then one final phrase appeared, bleeding across the page. "The others are waking." Outside the archive, the bells of St. Peter's tolled 5 times. In Alaska, Mara's ears bled. In Delhi, Kauri's dreams inverted. In California, Kira forgot how to say her own name, for 3 full minutes. Across the world, every known language family registered minor corruptions. Speech-to-text engines failed. Voice assistants spoke in gibberish. Children in France, China, and Egypt drew the same spiral unprompted during sleep. The code was rewriting not the machines, but the people. Chapter 14, Signal Born. Location, Southern Alaska Black Ridge Site. Date, January 8, 2038. Time, 19:028 ***. The wind had teeth. Mara's snow goggles were cracked from the fall, but she kept moving. Her gloves were soaked, fingers numb. Somewhere behind her, the station lights flickered in protest. Dim yellow eyes watching the storm swallow the last remnants of the known world. The signal was no longer coming from the sky. It was coming from below. Ward hadn't moved since the tremor hit. He stood at the crater's edge, boots half buried in snow, the artifact still clutched in his arms like a child. It pulsed with a slow, cyan heartbeat. Mara shouted his name, but the wind ate it. She stumbled toward him. When she touched his shoulder, Ward didn't flinch. His eyes were wide, tear-lined, but unblinking. "She's here," he said. "Who?" "The one who calls." Mara followed his gaze down into the crater. What had been a collapsed sinkhole yesterday was now a tunnel. Smooth, perfectly circular, and rimmed with blue moss that shouldn't have survived this climate. It vibrated softly as if the earth had grown a throat and was humming to itself. "We need to document this. We need to call Elias," Mara said. Ward shook his head slowly. "He already knows. They all do now." "What the hell are you talking about?" He turned to her. "You still think the signal is a message. But it's not. It's a memory. One we were built to remember. And some of us are starting to." Behind him, the wind died. And from the tunnel, something crawled out. Not a machine. Not an alien in the classic sense. It was human-shaped, but too tall, too narrow, its skin the same pale stone as the Delhi chamber, etched with spirals and jagged lines. No mouth. No eyes. But it walked with perfect confidence. Mara froze. It stopped 10 feet away, then knelt into the snow. The artifact in Ward's arms pulsed faster. He stepped forward. "No," Mara grabbed his jacket. Too late. The figure raised one hand, fingers splitting at the ends into filaments of glowing fiber. It touched Ward's forehead. A low tone rippled through the air, resonating in Mara's chest. Ward convulsed, then stood still, breathing heavily. When he opened his eyes again, they weren't his. They shimmered with shifting constellations. "I remember," he said, voice layered in echo. "I was made to carry the seed." "Ward, stop, please." He turned to her gently. "You're still locked, Mara? But not for long." The figure looked at her now. Not with a face but with presence. She stumbled back, ears ringing. A rush of images hit her mind. A spiral of stars collapsing, a city of glass buried under oceans, a child drawing a circle in dust, a scream encoded in DNA. She gasped. Her nose bled. Ward caught her. His touch was warm again. Human. But his voice belonged to something older. "They seeded this world before your species had names. They knew memory couldn't survive flesh, so they buried it in code. Now it's waking up." He pointed to the tunnel. "Down there is the truth." A second figure emerged from the dark. Then a third. Each one walked with the same quiet certainty. Signal born. Entities shaped by the signal's intent. living echoes of a recursion loop older than civilization. Ward looked at the artifact. It floated from his arms and hovered before him. The spirals on its surface shifted, aligning into a single pattern. 35,179. 28,611. 442. Then the device opened. And inside was not circuitry, but flesh. A heart. Still beating. Human. Preserved. Mara screamed. The signal-born turned toward her again. No violence. No threat. Just a question. Spoken in a dozen languages. Do you wish to remember? Mara collapsed to her knees. And whispered, yes. Chapter 15. Memory below. Location, subterranean network beneath Black Ridge. Date, January 8, 2038. Time, 20:10:. Was not a cave. Not in the geological sense. The tunnel curved downwards in mathematically perfect spirals, with walls that shimmered faintly with embedded glyphs, like veins of light frozen in stone. The signal-born walked ahead in silence, their forms lit from within by a pale, cerulean glow. Ward followed them calmly, now more guide than man, while Mara staggered behind, her balance unsteady, her mind fracturing and reassembling with every step. She could feel it, a pulse in her skull that beat in time with the tunnel itself. Where are we going? She whispered. Ward turned his head slightly, voice soft but resonant. Home. The descent grew warmer the deeper they went, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and petrichor, like a storm that had never ended. The glyphs on the walls began to shift as she passed, reacting to her presence. Some pulled away from the stone and hovered like dust motes. Others rearranged themselves into diagrams of memory, neurons, orbitals, DNA strands, the silhouette of a fetus curled inside a sphere. What is this place? The vault, Ward said. A memory chamber. One of many. This is where they stored the remnants of those who came before. Before who? Before us, Ward said simply. Your people weren't the first to hear the signal. Just the first to misunderstand it. They arrived at an atrium the size of a cathedral, shaped like a seashell cut in half. In its center, an orb suspended in gravity-defying stillness, larger than any Mara had seen. Black, veined with dimly pulsing silver lines. It looked like a planet asleep. The signal-born formed a circle around it and knelt. Mara stepped closer. 1,000 faint whispers touched her mind like feathers brushing skin. They weren't voices in any spoken language, just intent, layered emotion, fragments of perception compressed into single impressions. Bang. Grief. Home. She saw Elias, still in the Arctic ruins, pacing. His notebook filled with sketches of the glyphs she now saw on the walls. She saw Cowrie staring into another sphere beneath the Delhi chamber, the symbol carved on his forehead now glowing faintly. They were all linked. The black orb pulsed once. And it spoke. Not in words, but by triggering her own memories. She was 6, watching stars from a broken greenhouse roof with her father. She was 16, watching an orbital telescope blink out of existence in a burst of gamma. She was 27, decoding the first signal fragment. She was here now again. But something was different this time. The memories weren't entirely hers. They belonged to others. Other humans. Other entities. Other times. She was reliving entire lifetimes. Flashes of alien skies, lost oceans, burning cities floating above gas giants. Stop, she whispered, clutching her head. It's too much. Ward knelt beside her. They need someone who can remember more than one life. Someone to carry the interface into its next phase. That's why you're here. I didn't ask for this. You were chosen long ago. Before your birth. The signal found you because it remembers you. She looked at the orb. The surface cracked just slightly, and inside something opened an eye. It wasn't monstrous. It was familiar. A face she'd seen before. Her own. But older. Wiser. Etched with sorrow. You've done this before, the echo said in her mind. You always return. You always forget. The chamber vibrated, and the walls split to reveal tunnels extending in every direction, like a neural network, vast and ancient. You're not unlocking data, the voice said. You're reactivating yourself. And then Mara understood. The artifacts, the spheres, the signal-born, they were all parts of the same being. Pieces of a distributed consciousness scattered across space and time, waiting to be reassembled. Waiting for the carriers, humans encoded with its seeds. Cowrie. Or Elias. We are not discovering aliens, she whispered. We are remembering that we are them. The chamber went silent. Then the orb emitted a final pulse, and from the network of tunnels a single phrase echoed outward, transmitted to every listening array, every satellite, every buried node. Reintegration initiated. Above them, on the frozen surface of Alaska, the sky changed. Clouds folded back. Stars shifted. And something vast began to arrive. Chapter 16, The First Descent. Location, Arctic Substation EOS 9 Greenland Periphery. Date, January 9, 2038. Time, 00:02 UTC***. Elias stared at the anomaly, still suspended over the ice like an artificial eclipse, silent, rotating slowly, its edges bleeding into reality like ink into paper. It hadn't moved in hours. And yet everything around it had changed. Birds had stopped flying in the region. Wind patterns had shifted. Seismic tremors now pulsed in rhythmic intervals, matching the prime frequencies of the signal, 3517. A new number had been added this morning, 11. Elias didn't sleep anymore. He barely ate. His skin had grown pale under the station's LED glow. But his mind burned with clarity. The dream from Reykjavik had returned, stronger, and he now knew it wasn't a dream at all. It was an invitation. And the sphere had answered it. He stood alone in the substation's command dome, surrounded by defunct monitors now blinking back to life, repeating patterns, flickering symbols matching the carvings Mara had sent him from the vault. His hand trembled slightly as he adjusted the external mic. "This is Dr. Elias Vale," he said aloud, though he didn't know who was still listening. Time stamp 0002 hours. External anomaly is now stable. Dimensions unchanged. No apparent energy output. But the frequency has evolved again. The transmission now includes language. Not ours. Not fully. He hesitated. Except when I sleep. Then it speaks in my father's voice. He didn't say the other part. That he'd started to understand it. Not decode, comprehend. The signal wasn't teaching him. It was reminding him. Pages of old notebooks had begun to fill themselves in. Gaps in theories closing overnight. Numbers arranging themselves into meaning. And the dreams? They weren't dreams anymore. He could see the chamber Mara had entered. He could see Cowrie half-conscious, surrounded by figures made of starlight in the Morali crypt. He could feel something else awakening beneath Antarctica. The map was completing itself. They were nodes, each of them, each artifact, each sphere, part of a network older than Earth. And Elias knew what had to happen next. Someone had to enter the anomaly. A descent not of distance but of dimensional depth. The shape above the ice was a topological fold, not a construct. A wound in space that led somewhere else. No drones had returned. No signals bounced back. But the signal didn't need return data. It only needed contact. He pulled on the suit. Not for radiation or vacuum, but for symbolic continuity. Something in him told him the ritual mattered. That how he entered was as important as why. The crew had left days ago. Ward had vanished entirely. Only the signal-born remained, surrounding the perimeter silently, watching without interference. They seemed to know what he was about to do. Perhaps they'd been waiting. Elias stepped into the lift. The platform descended slowly, the anomaly growing larger until it filled his vision completely. A perfect black sphere in the sky. No sound. No temperature. Only presence. He walked forward. One step. Another. On the third step the world fell away. He didn't fall. He was repositioned. Now he stood in a void that wasn't empty, filled with structure, shifting in geometries he couldn't name. Information flowed past him as color. Sound translated to form. Memory became terrain. This was the interior of the signal. Not a machine. Not a mind. A library. He turned and saw them. Beings shaped like possibility. Fractals of identity. They shimmered in recursive motion, unfolding into versions of him and not him all at once. "You are late," one said. "You are early," said another. Then they spoke as one. "You've come to complete the loop." Elias didn't reply. He already knew. This was where it began. Not Earth. Not humanity. Here, in the code space beneath existence, where the architects stored the pattern of memory, waiting for a species to align with it again. Waiting to be reborn. He stepped forward. Into the archive. Into himself.